Hi, everyone. My presentation is on the perceptions of the Armenian Youth Federation. My name's Karine Shatikian, and my professor mentor was Dr. Karina Karapetian Georgi. So what's the problem? Part of the boilerplate of the AYF states that the AYF is the largest and most influential Armenian American youth organization in the world. But the problem is that in the Western region, the membership is under 500 people. And this is alarming because in Los Angeles, the Armenian population is the second largest diaspora in the world, first being in Russia. So to understand the AYF, you have to know what the ARF is. The Armenian Revolutionary Federation was founded in 1890 in Tbilisi, Georgia by Christopher Mikhailyan, Stepan Zoryan, and Simon Zavaryan. Their goals were for a free, independent, and united Armenia. And actually, during Armenia's first independence, they were the ruling party. So from 1918, whenever Armenia seceded from the Ottoman Empire, to 1921, whenever they fell into the hands of the Soviet Union. But once that happened, they were banned from the country. So why was the ARF even created? So if you think of eth class, and Milton Gordon said that that's when, in a person's social life, people stay with their ethnic group. So basically, in this time, in the late 1800s to early 1900s, Armenians were being persecuted by Ottoman Turks, and ultimately a genocide was committed against them where 1.5 million Armenians died. So this group was created to bring the Armenian community together so they can survive, essentially. So when they were kicked out of the Soviet Union, they decided to send one of the members of the ARF, General Garagi Nezhnet, to Boston. And in 1933, the AYF was founded. They are the youth organization of the ARF, and they also have the same goals, which is a free, independent, united Armenia. The AYF is dedicated to the principles of freedom, self-determination, democracy, economic justice, and social equality. And they do this through their 5 pillars of cultural, educational, social, athletic, and political. So the AYF has numerous programs, and I'm going to talk about 4 of them, which I spoke with my interviewees about. So to understand the programs, I'm going to explain each one. So the April 24th protest is one of the biggest events in the Armenian community as a whole. April 24th is considered the day of the Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. The AYF has been planning their own protests in front of the Turkish consulate for the past 30, 40 years. However, when 2015 started to roll around, it was decided that the Armenian Genocide Committee would be created, the AGC. And that's all the different churches, Armenian organizations, political groups have come together to plan a huge protest to demand recognition and reparations for the genocide. Because up to date, the current government of Turkey has denied the genocide ever happening, and they actually spend billions of dollars denying the genocide. So that giant protest actually happened in 2015 for the 100th anniversary of the genocide. And this year, we will be continuing working with the AGC to have another March for Justice on April 24th, which is Monday. So what's important to understand is that while the AYF has joined this larger group of people to create the Armenian Genocide Committee, none of these other organizations have ever planned a protest. The AYF has the knowledge, the manpower, the strength. They are the ones who really do execute this kind of event. And then there's the Divest Turkey initiative. So as I said, the Turkish government spends millions of dollars denying the genocide and creates a lot of anti-genocide rhetoric in their schools and in the public. So it was discovered by an AYF member that the UC system has $70 million worth of bonds invested into the Republic of Turkey. So the AYF came up with a resolution and worked with each UC school's ASA, which is the Armenian Students Association, to divest that money from the Turkish government because one, it's a financially irresponsible decision because the government of Turkey is very unstable right now. And why would they invest money in a country that denies a genocide? And up to date, all 9 out of 9 UC campuses have decided to divest the money from the Turkish government. That money won't be divested until it goes through the UC regents, but it's still, all the schools have approved it. Then there's the With Our Soldiers program. There is a region near Armenia where 99.8% of its population is Armenian. And in 1921, that region was given to Azerbaijan. This region is called Nagorno-Karabakh. When that region was given to Azerbaijan, it was part of it during the Soviet Union. It was considered part of that country. However, in 1921, that region decided to secede and now they're their own independent country. Their goals are to join Armenia, but now there is a lot of conflict between NKR and Azerbaijan. So on the front lines, a lot of people have been dying in the past 10 years, and more recently, there's been a lot of aggression on the front lines in the past year. So the AYF has relaunched their program called With Our Soldiers, where the families of a fallen soldier get $1,000 and each child gets $250. And in that region, men are the sole providers, so when they pass away, it's really hard for these families to restart their lives. So it's a program that we have implemented to help these families. And then there's the AYF Youth Corps program on a happier note. It sends Armenian diaspora to Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh to conduct day camps in different villages for 6 weeks. So in those camps, they learn English, different songs, you do arts and crafts, you have educationals on hygiene and history, and it's just a great way to build bridges between the community here and the Armenians there. So these are the programs I spoke about with my interviewees, and they were 4 Armenian women from Cal Poly Pomona. None of them have been affiliated with the AYF, and all their parents come from different countries. They all come from different backgrounds. One lives in a predominantly white neighborhood. The other one, she was actually born in Armenia. One is involved in one Armenian organization, but it's not the AYF, and the other one, she went to an Armenian school her whole life, but is not affiliated with any organization. So it was obvious through my interviews that there was a lack of knowledge. One of the interviewees said that she felt as though that she wouldn't join the organization because she didn't know anything about Armenia or its current topics or anything. So for those reasons, she wouldn't want to join. Also, none of them had ever heard about any of the programs, let it be Youth Corps or With Our Soldiers. The Youth Corps program doesn't send AYF members, they send any Armenian diasporan youth. So it was interesting how none of them had ever heard about that program. And it was interesting that all 4 of them had been going to these the April 24th protests since they were 7 years old, but none of them knew who planned the protests. So it was interesting that they didn't even know that. They also had no interest in learning about the AYF or their culture in general. One said, it's not for me personally. I don't have much interest in politics. I know that's not all of what they do, but I just don't have an interest in politics. And the other one said, I'm not ashamed to be Armenian, but I'm not passionate to find out. Right now, it's not something I care to know. Yes, I'm proud to be Armenian, but it is not my ultimate identifier of who I am. So it's interesting how no one really wants to know, and they don't care to know, even though there's a lot of things going on in Armenia's culture and history, and even current events that are happening overseas right now. But it was also evident through my interviews that none of them, they didn't know anything, and why is that? The AYF hasn't been available to their local communities. One said that she never heard about the AYF until she came to college, and that was because the Armenian Students Association and the AYF have a partnership, and they work together for a lot of events. One actually lives in the valley, and she never heard about the AYF, and the AYF hub is in Glendale because all the Armenians are actually living in Glendale. If you go around that, it seems like no one knows about the organization. But it was also interesting how the genocide had one thing in common for all the interviewees, and they said that it brought all the Armenians together, and this also has to do with another theme that Gordon brought up, that he said that whenever there is a crisis, all the people will put aside their differences and come together. And for this day, they all do put aside their class differences and their social differences, and they come together to demand recognition for the Armenian genocide. So if it's not obvious, I'm part of the AYF. I'm actually on the central executive, where I and 6 other people run the Western region. So it was really hard for me to understand their lack of interest. I came in thinking that the main reason that they wouldn't want to join is because of dialectic differences. In Armenian, we have 2 different dialects, and majority of the members of the AYF speak Western Armenian, and all my interviewees speak Eastern, but that ended up not being the case at all. And it was actually really disheartening to hear that they didn't know who planned the protest whatsoever, because I've seen our membership lose sleep over it numerous years, so it was just kind of disheartening. So why am I talking about this? The AYF has a core group of people who are willing to work. They have a small group of people that give constant attention to politics, and those are the members of the AYF. Then there's a slightly larger group that's interested but comparatively passive, and those are the majority of the people who just come to a protest or go to one Armenian Students Association meeting a year. But there is a larger group of people who just don't care. But if the AYF did a better job outreaching to the community, maybe those numbers can get smaller. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions for Karim.
Yeah.
As being part of the AYF, what sort of plans do you possibly have to kind of, I guess, reach out to the community more and make it more, out there that
Sure.
the AYF
So for college campuses, most college campuses have an Armenian Students Association, and the AYF this year has created a new presentation and is reaching out to all these schools to go to give a presentation about the organization. Recently, the AYF planned a camp with the Armenian students of the Glendale Unified School District. So those high school kids went up to camp with AYF members, and it wasn't about AYF, but just a fun weekend, and that way they can learn about, like, meet us and see what we do, and we've recruited a lot of members from there too. It's just about going to these schools and different organizations and just talking to them about the work that we do. Yeah.
Do you think your results will be different if you had a larger sample size?
No. Because most of the people who aren't in the organization just always say, I don't have an interest in it, but they also don't know about it or care to know about it. But if you get them at a younger age, like high school kids, they're more interested and willing to learn and invest their time. Any other questions?
Why do you think they don't, view it as important?
I think that whenever you have assimilated into like American culture and you don't really hear about your own culture and where you come from as much, you don't have that passion anymore. And like I've grown up hearing about the Armenian struggle my whole life, so I've always known and cared, but a lot of these people don't. One of my interviewees, she lives in a predominantly white neighborhood, rich white neighborhood, and she didn't know about anything until she went to college. And it's the job of like a parent and the job of you to actually be interested in learning. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are there other ways you can increase awareness or network with other universities to bring up the membership, something like that?
It's hard because in the end, the AYF is part of a youth organization of a political party. The ARF is a political party. So a lot of people have resentment toward the ARF, or they don't know much about it, and they put their hands up and they're like, don't come too close. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the outreach, your sort of significance, right? So do you think it's a matter of just access, like people accessing the organization, or is it also in how the organization sort of presents the material to get people to see, right, that it's important?
It's both. Before, it would be more about like knowledge-based outreach and like this is what we do, like we demand reparations and recognitions and stuff like that. But there's a lot of fun things that the AOIF does. We have an annual Olympics. A lot of people care about human rights issues. We have a committee that works on that. If people care about the environment, we have a committee that works on environmental issues. So there really is a place for everyone. It's just about presenting that so everyone knows that there is a place for you.